A mother vanishes from her own home in broad daylight. An armed intruder is caught on camera. 4 months later, no arrest. A wife disappears in the middle of the ocean. Her husband's story crumbles when GPS data reveals he's been lying. She's never found. 2 cases. 2 families. Infinite questions. Welcome to Investigative Crime Documentary, where the truth always surfaces, even when those responsible try to bury it. Today, we're diving deep into 2 active investigations that have shocked the nation. One involves an FBI director's unprecedented intervention. The other involves a crime so perfectly concealed that prosecution might be impossible. Grab your phone. Like, comment, and hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about justice in America. Let me start by clearing something up. 4 months into the Nancy Guthrie investigation, misinformation was spreading like wildfire across social media. One report claimed that Savannah Guthrie, Nancy's famous television host daughter, had spent $500,000 on private investigators to find her missing mother. Journalists were running with it. People online believed it. But here's the thing about misinformation in high-profile cases, it clouds the truth. I've spent months covering this case. I have sources inside the investigation. And I want to tell you definitively, that report is false. Completely false. Savannah Guthrie did not hire private investigators. She did not spend $500,000. It's only the Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI conducting this investigation. That's it. Why does this matter? Because in cases like this, when families are desperate, when the clock is ticking, when every single hour matters, the narrative matters. The facts matter. And when we get caught up in rumors and speculation, we lose sight of what's really happening on the ground. What's really happening is this: a woman disappeared. A woman who built an entire life of independence after her husband passed away. A woman who raised children alone. A woman who chose to live on her own terms in Arizona. On that fateful day, Nancy Guthrie was at home. Her family expected her at church. She never showed up. When they arrived at her residence and walked through that door, they found something that would haunt them forever: blood on the porch. Visible evidence of violence. The kind of blood pattern that screams something went terribly, catastrophically wrong. But here's where the investigation gets complicated. Because within those crucial first hours, those golden hours that law enforcement calls the most critical window in any missing person case, tensions between federal and local authorities would create a chasm that neither side has fully explained. Kash Patel, the FBI director, spoke publicly about what happened. He said that from day one, the FBI offered their assistance because this was a state and local matter initially. They weren't the lead agency because there was no evidence of a federal crime. They showed up immediately and offered help. But then he said something crucial: they were not let in for 4 days. 4 days. In a missing person case, 4 days is an eternity. 4 days is the difference between a fresh crime scene and a contaminated one. 4 days is the difference between 100 FBI agents rolling out of a hotel, packed up, ready to deploy, and waiting idle in a hotel room while crucial evidence potentially disappears. The Pima County Sheriff responded to these allegations. Sheriff Nano said that wasn't entirely accurate. He said the FBI did have someone on the FBI task force working within the sheriff's office, and that person was there within the first 48 hours. 2 completely different narratives. 2 different versions of what happened during those critical early hours. And here's where it gets really interesting: they're both technically telling the truth, but the nuance matters enormously. I spoke with retired FBI agent Maureen O'Donnell about this exact contradiction. She's a friend of mine. She's worked major cases. She's processed crime scenes. She understands the machinery of federal investigations at a level most people never will. And here's what she explained to me: having one FBI agent assigned to a fugitive task force, maybe someone who normally works gang cases or kidnapping cases, is entirely different from having a specialized evidence response team arrive with a full contingent of specialists. When the FBI shows up to a major crime scene, they don't just send a guy. They send a team of people trained specifically in evidence collection, forensic analysis, crime scene reconstruction. They bring equipment. They bring protocols. They bring the full machinery of federal investigative power. That 4-day delay meant that the local law enforcement was working the scene without that specialized capability. It meant that the driveway, a critical evidence pathway, was not immediately sealed off with the kind of precision that prevents contamination. It meant that the initial walkthrough of the home didn't have the benefit of a team leader who'd done this 1,000 times before, saying, "Here's how we're going to move through this space. Here's where the perpetrator likely walked. Here's where we establish our clean pathway to avoid disturbing potential evidence." Morin explained it like this: when you arrive at a scene like Nancy's home, you don't just rush in and start looking around. You formulate a plan. A comprehensive plan. You do an initial walkthrough with family members and officers who were first on scene, and they tell you exactly what they found, what they saw, what seemed out of place. Then you use that information to determine how the perpetrator likely entered and exited. If the driveway appears to be the point of exit, you establish an alternate pathway, maybe on the side of the property, and you use that to conduct your investigation. You put canvas over walls. You avoid touching door handles, window frames, anything that might hold evidence. Because here's the fundamental truth of crime scene investigation: you don't know where the evidence will lead you. But with 4 days having passed, with a crime scene potentially contaminated by initial responders, with the press already showing up within 48 hours and creating a media circus that prevented proper evidence preservation, the investigation had already been compromised. Morin made another point that's crucial to understanding this case. She said that when Kash Patel showed up in Tucson, and he did visit, he saw the agents working. 150 agents and analysts working on the Nancy Guthrie investigation. That's an enormous deployment. That's the kind of resource allocation you see in the most serious cases. Some people theorize that Patel was there for a different reason, something pre-planned. But Morin and I both believe he was there to see the investigation firsthand. And yes, she said that's unusual. In her entire career, she's never had an FBI director show up to a crime scene. She's never even had an assistant director show up. So why was Kash Patel in Tucson? The most likely answer is that he was there to support his troops. To let them know that the FBI was behind them. To see the investigation with his own eyes. And maybe, just maybe, to help coordinate between the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Office, two agencies that seem to be operating with different assumptions about how the investigation should proceed. Now, let me tell you about the most crucial breakthrough in this case. Because there was a moment, a specific moment, when everything changed. The Google Nest doorbell camera. Nancy Guthrie had a doorbell camera at the front of her home. It required a paid subscription service to save footage, and apparently, Nancy hadn't maintained that subscription. The footage wasn't automatically saved. But here's where FBI capability came into play. The FBI went to Google. They said, "We know there's no subscription, but we need that footage. Can you check your metadata? Can you pull something from your servers?" And Google said yes. What they found was horrifying. The doorbell camera captured someone approaching the home. Someone with a gun. Someone with a backpack. Someone who came prepared. Someone who came with what investigators believe was a kill kit, a tarp, binding materials, tools designed for violence. When Morin saw those images, she described her reaction in a word: appalled. Not just appalled that a crime had occurred. Appalled at what Nancy Guthrie had endured in her final moments. The blood on the porch suddenly took on a different meaning. Blood from elderly women on blood thinners can result from minor contact, a brush against a cactus, a rose bush, a small fall. But this wasn't minor bleeding. This was evidence of something catastrophic. The Google Nest images confirmed it. They showed not just a crime, but a violent crime. A prepared crime. A crime that had been planned. And this is where the FBI's specialized capability became invaluable. A local sheriff's office might never have been able to extract that metadata. They might not have had the relationships with Google. They might not have had the technical expertise. But the FBI did. And that single piece of evidence, those doorbell camera images, became the foundation of the case. If you've made it this far, you're watching Investigative Crime Documentary at the right time. Drop a comment right now with, "I'm still here," and let's see who's truly following this shocking story. Your engagement helps us bring you more cases like this. Like, comment, and subscribe to never miss an update, ***. But 4 months later, Nancy Guthrie still hasn't been found. No arrest has been made. The investigation continues, but it's moving slowly. And that's when a heartbreaking moment revealed the true cost of this case. In one of her Instagram stories, Savannah Guthrie posted something that cut through all the investigative details, all the procedural debates, all the technical discussions about evidence and timelines. She wrote, "Oh my soul, it cries out. Bring her home with a heart." That's a mother. That's a woman who has to go on national television every morning and pretend everything is normal while her mother is missing. That's a daughter who is living in a nightmare where she has to maintain her professional composure while her family is falling apart. That's a daughter who knows that somewhere out there, her mother, who was independent, who was strong, who raised her alone, is gone. We get caught up in the investigative details. We talk about protocols and procedures and evidence procedures. But we sometimes forget, there are people suffering. Real people. Real families. Real pain. Nancy Guthrie raised her children alone after her husband passed away. She chose to live independently in Arizona. She didn't let anyone push her around. According to everyone who knew her, she was a strong woman. A woman who made her own decisions. So when the investigation turns to the question of her security cameras, the narrative becomes complicated. According to dispatch recordings that were released weeks into the investigation, the family told first responders that they had no access or control over Nancy's cameras. The cameras, they said, were for wildlife purposes. Nancy had set them up to watch birds and animals around the property. That's it. But here's the thing that doesn't add up. Nancy had a Google Nest doorbell camera. A doorbell camera isn't for watching wildlife. A doorbell camera is for home security. It's for knowing who's approaching your front door. It's for protecting your home. So why did Nancy have a doorbell camera if she was only interested in watching birds? Maureen and I discussed this exact point. If Nancy was my mother, I told Maureen, would have said, "Mom, let me have access to these cameras too, just in case something happens. Just so I can check on you. Just so I know you're safe." But Maureen made a different point. She said, "Your mom is an independent woman. My mom is an independent woman. Some women, strong women who've raised children alone, don't want anyone checking on them. They don't want anyone monitoring them. They don't want anyone having access to their private lives." And Maureen knows this firsthand. When her mother was alive, when she was still living independently, Maureen's mother made her own choices about her security, about her privacy, about her autonomy. And Maureen didn't boss her around. That's the thing about independent elderly women, you have to respect their choices, even when you don't fully understand them. But still, the question lingers. Why didn't Nancy want her family to have access to her security cameras? Was it pure independence? Or was there something else? Maureen made another crucial point about the investigation. Sheriff Nanos recently said that people are working hard and doing their best to stay within the rules. No one wants to arrest the wrong person. And Maureen understood exactly what he meant. Because there were 2 raids. 2 separate occasions when law enforcement detained people based on cell phone location data. Their phones had pinged in the area. There was probable cause, enough that judges signed off on search warrants. But nothing came of it. Both individuals were eventually cleared. Now, technically, they weren't arrested. But they were detained. Their homes were searched. Their lives were turned upside down. And for a case like this, a case where the murder charge could result in life in prison or worse, you can't make a mistake. You get one shot. One chance to build a case that will hold up in court. If you arrest the wrong person and then have to let them go, if the evidence falls apart or gets excluded by a judge, if the jury hears that you've already made mistakes in this investigation, then your chances of conviction plummet. So Sheriff Nanos is being extra careful now. He's making sure that when an arrest comes, if it comes, it's the right person. It's someone they can prosecute. It's someone who will face justice. But that caution comes with a cost. It comes with time. It comes with 4 months passing. It comes with a family still waiting for answers. Morin also addressed the DNA testing that's been slowing things down. Sheriff Nanos mentioned that DNA is being tested at multiple laboratories. Quantico has the FBI's sophisticated lab. But some DNA samples have been sent to private labs in Florida that specialize in touch DNA analysis. Now, this might seem like a delay. But Morin explained why this actually makes sense. The FBI lab is extraordinarily capable. But some private labs have specialized expertise in touch DNA, the kind of DNA left on surfaces just from fingertips, just from skin contact. If the private lab is better at extracting and analyzing that specific type of DNA, then it's worth waiting for the results. But here's the reality, the longer investigations take, the colder the trail gets. The longer it takes, the more time the defense has to prepare. The longer it takes, the more memories fade. The longer it takes, the harder it becomes to keep the case in the public eye. And public attention matters. Morin knows this. I know this. Because once the cameras move on to the next big story, once the media circus leaves town, cases can go cold. Cases can stall. Cases can eventually be filed away as unsolved. Thank you for watching Investigative Crime Documentary. Thank you for caring about these cases. Thank you for being part of the search for truth. Like, comment, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next.